Welcome to Sifting For Soul. I'm Brandon, engineer by profession, but photographer by passion. Today, you're joining me for a quick tip. It's a Tuesday in Dublin. I'm in Stephen's Green.
St. Stephen's Green, I should call it if I want to be complete and accurate. It's not a very large park. It's really a rectangular park that's pretty much in the center of Dublin, and it's got quite an interesting history, which I won't go into now for the sake of brevity, but if you're in Dublin, have a wander and do check out the signs. It's quite interesting and beautiful.
As you can see, the sky is really white and there's zero drama. It's not very interesting. Normally people avoid shooting on days like today. I came out to shoot to create this tutorial for you, and because I love photography. But this particular tip I have for you today, use your timer. So without further ado, let's get it.
Even though the weather's not perfect at St. Stephen's Green, there are a ton of things to shoot. Perhaps the graceful yet quacky and noisy swans and the people feeding them whatever they brought for lunch. I didn't know that swan diets were so diverse, but apparently they are. Some people only shoot when the weather is perfect, or they only shoot a beautiful thing. I like to shoot trees, even when the weather's not perfect. Why? Well, because it's not that challenging to shoot beautiful things. I like the metaphor for life of finding the beauty in the thing rather than just the thing of beauty. Before we can get into the fun stuff of shooting, I'm going to show you how to configure one of the 5 settings that every photographer should just know how to do on their cameras, DSLR or mirrorless, setting the timer. I'm going to use Canon cameras because that's what I have at my disposal when I'm making this video, but I also have Olympus and Panasonic bodies in my collection if you'd like to see it set on those. Not sure why someone might need to use the timer with today's technology, with the in-body stabilization and the lens stabilization and the combination of the two. I provide my rationale in the 5 things every photographer should just know video, linked in the description. Feel free to ask me in the comments if that doesn't make sense to you. I'm using my 5DSR, my Landscape Beast, my 50 megapixel monster. I expect that there's still quite a few of the 5D Mark whatever bodies out there, and this technique will work for those full frame monsters. Okay, so you start by pressing the Q button to bring up your menus. And the menu item that you're looking for is drive mode. It's going to be on the bottom row, the 3rd option from the left. And once you're on the drive mode, press the set button in the center of your dial. And then you can't use the joystick, but you can use the dial to rotate over to the different drive modes. And so the last 2 on mine are the 10-second drive mode and then the 2-second drive mode for the 2-second timer. That's the one I'm going to select and then press set. And then I noticed in my menu that the 2-second drive mode is selected. Perhaps you want to do this without chimping. You can press the drive autofocus button on the top of the camera, and then you'll see the drive mode appear in the viewfinder as well as on the LCD on the top of the camera. You can then scroll through with the dial on the back of the camera to select the drive mode that you want. The Q button's in the top right corner on a more modern camera like the Canon M50, and then on the left side, the 3rd option down, you have drive mode, which you can just touch. That'll bring up the drive mode options on the bottom of the screen, and you can touch the different drive modes that you want, and then press the set button in the middle of the button quadrant, and it'll make that the set option for you. You can do the reverse to disable it. If you press the info button a couple of times, you'll get a menu that looks very similarly to the 5DSR menu. Then you press the Q to make it selectable, and then you can use the touch screen to select the different modes that you're interested in. Select the drive mode, and then you'll notice that the dial doesn't change the drive mode. You'll actually have to press the set button, and then you'll have the option to change the drive modes by touching them and then pressing set again to select the drive mode that you're interested in. So now that you have a couple of ways of setting and unsetting the timer, chimping or not chimping, let's have a little mosey, you and I, around St. Stephen's Greens and see if we can shoot some cool landscapes with it. I selected as my location the area of St. Stephen's Green where the bronze statue has been erected as a tribute to poet W.B. Yeats. If you're not familiar with Yeats, easily one of his more popular poems is The Second Coming. Though I'm only loosely familiar with his work, I'd still recommend a dialogue of self and soul because it's relevant to this channel. For the first shot, I shoot in portrait mode. I often use portrait mode for trees because they're tall and I want to capture the height. Because of the white skies, I do a combination of things. I use a circular polarizer combined with bracketing to help me tease out as much detail as possible. Because there's at least the potential that I or the camera is going to have to combine images, the timer becomes even more useful. Decreasing any variability increases the likelihood that all of the important elements of the shot are going to line up effectively. I played with positions a bit to capture the framing that I like the most, and I'm aware that I'm going to have to do some Photoshop magic to take out some of the more distracting elements, like the yellow bin off to the right and things like that. This is the in-body HDR process from my camera. It has the composition that I'm after and certainly enough dynamic range, but it doesn't have enough contrast and I still have to take out the distracting elements. So I remove the distracting elements in Photoshop and then I go through my Lightroom workflow. I've done a video on my Lightroom workflow for landscapes previously, and I'll put a link to that in the description. But effectively for this image, I drop the highlights and I boost the contrast, and then I add a vignette because the vignette also gives the illusion of detail in the sky. If you like a more dramatic image, have a play with some of the Lightroom filters. This filter is red and turquoise, and it gives the idea that there's a ton of drama in the sky, which works nicely with the shiny wet ground. So then rinse and repeat. I have pretty much the same workflow, but I'm scanning around for different compositions that I like. For some strange reason, I am in love with trees, so finding other trees that speak to me and trying to capture them, using other elements of the composition as well. Not everything's going to work, and that's fine. From the last two shots that I took, I got some of the elements that I wanted, specifically with the composition and the bricks and the leading lines, but I really wasn't able to recover enough sky, even using the filters, in a way that was pleasing to me. But it's fine, because with these experiments, you get a sense of what works for you and what doesn't work for you. There are times in which the timer makes sense to protect your options, the ability to combine images, the ability to get more dynamic range. Protecting those options is super valuable. There are other times when it doesn't make any sense. Like whenever I go to Singapore, I love to go to the butterfly garden at the airport. Definitely don't want to use a 2-second timer there because the butterfly is going to peace out before you get a picture of it. Or when I'm doing water drop photography, which I've recently gotten into, and it's really, really crappy weather and I want to take some pictures as a creative outlet, you shouldn't try to use a timer on this unless you are really, really good at math. It's really, really hard and not recommended. So that's about it. Know when and how to set and unset your timer. It'll make you a better photographer. It'll increase the likelihood that you get your shot. Thanks for joining me at St. Stephen's Green. And if you liked it, then like it. Click the like button. Subscribe and share if you know other people that you think would enjoy it. I'd appreciate it. It would help lend momentum to the community. And as always, have a safe and happy day life. And I'll see your lovely faces in a week for the very next episode.